Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast, the podcast of champions. And we are coming to you today after Rangers defeated Celtic by 2-0, proving yet again that the sun eventually always shines on the righteous. And I cannot think of anyone more righteous than my first guest today. It's Andy McGowan.
Hello, folks. Yes, I am indeed pretty righteous. And to paraphrase a song that was played in the dressing room, I'm feeling it.
Well, a person I'd like to be feeling is none other than Adam Thornton.
Oh, hello. What an intro. Thank you.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I meant in a cuddly post-Old Firm victory way, although we're getting used to them now.
Absolutely, yeah. Quite a lot of feeling to go on.
Yeah, the Rangers played Celtic. Usual thing happened. There's your podcast. See you in a week. But no. We will sit and it's always enjoyable to analyse it. Before we get into it today, though, lads, one word answer, please, and I'll let you expand on it as we go through the show. But one word answer. At any point in the 2 weeks since the draw, did you think we were going to lose, Andy?
No.
Adam?
No.
And that is it in a nutshell. Exactly the same. When the draw came out, I was like, yes, great. You know, obviously home draw, you're always happy with that. But I thought, great, you know, knock them out now. Keep the lads focused, because obviously having won the league and going into Europe, that maybe there's a chance of a drop off. That'll keep the focus going. And I honestly didn't come across many Rangers fans who didn't share that. And the best thing for me about yesterday was draw comes out, Rangers fans think they're going to win, Celtic fans think they're going to lose. You go through, you know, obviously as you get closer to the game, the nerves kick in and whatnot. But how many Old Firm games, Andy, did we go through in the last few years where we did the thing of, on the Monday when you're far enough away from it, you kind of know what the likely outcome is, but you build yourself up, and by the Saturday or the Sunday, you're, you know, battle fever, you're ready to go, and then you would go and lose. That's 180 now. That's where they are. That they were talking, you know, bluster. There's no other word for it. You know, just trying to convince themselves that what was going to happen wasn't going to happen, and then Rangers just clinically, quietly, I don't think without reaching our best, dispatched them in a very straightforward fashion.
We hold the whip hand in these games. Now, next season it could be different because we don't know what Celtic will do, don't know what our recruitment will be like. But at this moment in time, and the build up to this game, we held the whip hand because we've got a wee body of evidence now between this season's Old Firm games and even last season for most of the part, where if we turn up and we do what we can do, then we're usually better than them tactically, and we're usually better than them quality-wise as well. And I thought yesterday that was the case. I thought, I mean, this much vaunted diamond that they thought was now our kryptonite because they'd nearly competed ways in 2 games with it. I thought the tactics for Gerrard and his team were bang on. And the other big part of the game yesterday was that when it counted, we had more quality than them. And I think that's the story of the game, to be honest with you. So it's like studying for an exam. If you study for an exam, you know you're going to pass it if you turn up on the day and you remember what you know. And the only way you can mess it up is on your own. I think that's where we were at yesterday. We knew that if we came on, did what we can do, played to 90% of what we can. In fact, I don't even think we were 90% yesterday. I thought we were a bit less than that. We were going to win it. And I think the flip side of that is true of Celtic. They didn't really believe that they could do it. I don't think their fans really in their heart of hearts knew it. It was the last vestiges of a bad season for them. But I think it's just so good to feel this way just now about Rangers and to know that they're back in their box. And this, I'm hoping the mental damage is
irreparable,
long lasting. Yeah.
Adam, you're a tactics guy, so I'll come to you on a point that Andy raised yesterday, which was Rangers, I think, went with the team that we predicted that they would go with. You know, you can always have debates about a player that, you know, you might think should be in or I might think should be in. But I think when we were saying what do we think the manager will pick, we all felt Arfield will come into midfield, Arribo will push up. And that's, of course, what he did. Celtic did go with this diamond that Andy has spoken about. Now, you know tactics better than I do, but that's a formation that relies on your fullbacks. You really need two very, very talented fullbacks who can motor up and down the pitch and dominate the guys who are on their side. Didn't work out that way.
So it certainly didn't. I think Old Firm games are less about tactics than the other games are. I think it's very rare that you get an upset in an Old Firm game and it's because of a tactical masterstroke. The only one I can think of in recent years would be the 2-0 at Ibrox, September 2019, where Lennon came and kind of gave us quite a lot of respect in a way, and managed to pull off what I think we would class as an upset. Certainly the style of play that they had on the day with that high pressing style. So I think on the whole that's very, very rare. I think mostly these games are about emotion and they're about your big players turning up on the day, taking decisive chances. I think as you both nailed it there, the team did kind of pick itself. In terms of worries, I was worried a little bit about Arfield's ability to last the full 90 in this type of game. I needn't really have bothered there, given how inept Celtic were. And Arribo, I was a little bit concerned, but not concerned in the sense that Celtic are going to kill us because he's playing. It's more in the sense that he might not be able to impact the game as we know he can in these type of games. So it is, tactics do play a part in it, but for me it's all about the big players turning up. And you mentioned the Celtic fullbacks, and to go tactically, the Diamond, have we struggled against anybody really this season domestically? Hibs away, maybe in the early part of the season. Two up front, we don't struggle necessarily. It's more of a contest and more of a battle because it's man for man. But it wasn't two up front really yesterday. It was kind of one and a deep line. Yeah, one and a deep line attacking midfielder. But you're right about the fullbacks. They can't attack. Neither of them. They've not been able to attack all season. Taylor can't attack either. All Frimpong could do was attack, and then they switched to a diamond just as he leaves. It's strange in that sense, but you're right that the width needs to come from the fullbacks, and they need to be able to be the creative forces in the way that our two are. And we've said for how long, David, that Laxalt is hopeless, and he had a wee bit of a fan club going. After
made a lot of tackles.
After those tackles in that game, they got humped, and I feel like it kind of came home to roost yesterday. I think the problem is that obviously if you want to believe that somebody's a player just because they've played for AC Milan, then you've got a bit of confirmation bias on the go whenever something happens. But in reality, considering he's played in Serie A for so long, he's an absolute nightmare positionally. He can't cross the ball. He can't attack. And I think because he kind of flings himself about and he gets his dreadlocks flashing, and it kind of makes him look like he's really busy and energetic, but really he's just a bit like a headless chicken. And I think we've seen, particularly for the second goal, we've seen Joe Arribo just absolutely embarrass him.
Yeah, we've had a lot of fun with Laxalt this season, and I said right at the time that he signed that I don't normally comment on Celtic players because you're creating a hostage to fortune. They could go on and be very, very good. In his case, no, I knew. And when they brought Taylor on, I thought, well, that's different. It's not any better, but it is different. It's a wee bit like, if you've been trapped in a lift for a couple of days, you're released, but you suddenly find yourself in the arms of a serial killer. It's different, but your situation has not necessarily improved. On that, Andy, Joe Arribo had been some talk, I think fairly, to be honest, that he hasn't really turned up in Old Firm matches. And I think given the level of ability that he has, that's fair. His debut, he looked lost, but he's not the first, and he certainly won't be the last that's happened to. So you can excuse it. But he's been all right. I mean, he hasn't been terrible, but we know what he's capable of. I thought yesterday he was dynamite.
Yep, and I mean, folk are listening to me on the pods will know that for many a time I've used Stephen Naismith as an example of a player that comes to Rangers who should hit the ground running, but actually we sometimes don't realise what it takes to become, in inverted commas, a Rangers player, and it's taken him a couple of seasons. And I think we've got a couple of players in our squad at this moment in time that are much the same. They're coming of age. Hadji is starting to show that he can contribute. And by contribute, I mean hurt teams, be the cutting edge, be the person that takes the responsibility, that opens up defences when it's stuffy. Hadji's definitely done that this season, but Joe Arribo has really done it this season, and I think that he's starting to show the promise that his ability kind of suggested. I think he's in the right place because his ability is undoubted, right? He's one of the most fantastically skillful people I've seen. I mean, you could put him. He's a real cage footballer, right? You put him in a proverbial telephone box and you wouldn't be able to get the ball off him. His footwork is just sublime. And I often thought that if he just got a wee bit more robust and if he added that killer mentality that Steven Gerrard had, let's face it, Gerrard came as a big gangly kid and through the years he became a man monster and he allied that to a terrific will to win, but he had that killer instinct. He would go to war with somebody, but he had that ice, that steel. If Joe Arribo can continue to kind of bring that to his game, then he can do anything in football. I really, truly mean that. That when I look about and I see players like Osman Dembele and people like that, he could be what they are, right? Again, Dortmund, they've got two young boys there. He's in the same kind of class ability-wise. So the only thing that's stopping him bridge that gap is just maintaining his mentality, getting that killer instinct. And I thought yesterday he was a cutting edge. I thought the first half yesterday was brilliant. Doing that right-hand side with Patterson, some of the tight footwork, some of the tight football, Celtic couldn't live with it, and he was a constant threat. He was moving with the ball. And then that's the test is he hurt the teams. He cut inside for that first goal, and we've seen him do that a couple of times this season, and invariably has a shot. He wasn't really doing that last season as much as I liked. And then the second goal was utterly sublime. I mean, the Premier Sports guy spent most of that analysis talking about Laxalt and Azure and how they made an arse of it. Listen, the way he twisted him inside and out, it didn't matter what they'd done. He was getting into that byline, and once you get to that byline, you're in the world of fucking pain. And anything can happen. So I think Arribo was our match winner yesterday, although he probably wasn't the man of the match per se over the 90 minutes. I thought Arribo was the one that opened up Celtic, did the damage, and by that point, as we know, we get ahead at Ibrox, you're very unlikely to get a sniff.
Yeah, see, David. Sorry, just on that Arribo point, and before you move on, I think it's a really good point, and I think I've been quite critical of him in some respects, and it's not really a catch-all thing. I think it's quite easy to say, oh, he's great when we've got loads of the ball and he can break teams down, etc., and maybe isn't so good in the bigger games. I think it probably does fall like that generally before yesterday, but it's quite unfair to just have that as the blanket statement, I guess, which is probably what I've been a little bit critical of in the past. But I guess if you look at it logically, when we came into this season, our big issue was beating those teams that sit in and defend deep, and him and Hadji have played a huge role in beating them and making those more routine than they were in the last couple of years. So that 3 points is 3 points, and a win is a win. They've more than played their part in that sense. I actually think that Arribo, it was slightly different yesterday. First of all, he's playing in the front three, which in these type of games, I agree, is his best role. But he played a lot wider than he has done. You've seen he was pretty much on the byline for quite a lot of the game. And I think it was the introduction of Arfield. Now, Arfield, a lot of people are very quick to criticise, and he seems to have a bit of love-hate on the go. Sometimes I don't think he had a terrific game, but what he does give you is that dirty stuff. He ironically gives you everything that Arribo doesn't give you in central midfield. It's that off-the-ball running, the tackling, the wee cynical fouls. He's maybe not 100% on it. He could be a lot better on the ball, but in these type of games, having him running behind Arribo gives Arribo that platform that means he doesn't need to track back as much, and he can stay a little bit wider, and he can do what he does best. And I think we kind of nailed that as a tactical point.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I would have expected the Rangers coaching team to get the better of the Celtic coaching team yesterday. To be quite honest with you, I would have been incredibly disappointed, and I think they would as well. But we also have better players. I mean, it really is that simple, and they demonstrated it. That's not to say Celtic didn't get chances, but I think we have to remember their whole season boiled down to that 90 minutes yesterday. It really did. And you can do the argument of what it means more to us. It means the same, to both teams, but it should have meant more to them. They had more on the line. That was our last chance at any sort of redemption whatsoever. And I thought Rangers matched that, and again, just quality came out. Andy, speaking about fullbacks, Celtic, as we know, had kind of given their true indication on the feelings about the draw with they hung out the flag of please ban their reserve right back. But I am so excited about this kid. I mean, he's just, we see young players who come in with ability. It happens a lot, not just at Rangers, but all big clubs, because you don't get to play for, or get into a Rangers youth system if you don't have talent. But it's about the rest. When you make the step up, can you handle it? Can you handle the intensity? Can you handle the demands? You're not going to be cosseted in the way that the youngsters are in development squads. And every challenge so far that's been laid into to this kid, he's passed with flying colours.
He absolutely has. I'm just going to go back one wee step, Dave, because I think it's important about what you just said about Celtic being up for this. A lot of our achievements are getting besmirched by this Celtic of down tools nonsense. I don't believe that to be the case. My big fear yesterday was they would be trying to impress whoever's their next manager, who's undoubtedly watching that game yesterday. Plus, the players that are leaving, it's easy to say, they're down tools. You've still got to get a move. So on that point, I just wanted to make sure that people know Celtic aren't the down tools. They couldn't live with, that's the bottom line. But in Patterson, you're absolutely correct. We have a tendency as Rangers fans to we've got a patchy history when it comes to youngsters because we love them for 6 months and then they're shite, generally speaking. And there's very few exceptions to that. I mean, you think about Fleck, you think about Ross McCrory, trying to think who else would have had
Hutton initially.
Hutton's a good example as well. Stevie Smith, and so I'm overly cautious because obviously I'm on a platform like this and people listen to you, and the easy thing to do is to gush and say, oh, he's brilliant and what a player we've got here and all the rest of it. I think that's the case, right? But I'm also kind of tempering it because I've also hearing crazy talk like, you could sell Tav and Tav's got a battle and so on, that kind of stuff for that right back position. What we've got here is a boy that has all the attributes and he's going to get better. And I still think there's a couple of wee things in his game. I don't think his delivery's stellar. I don't think his final ball is stellar. I think his athleticism sets him apart. I think his physique is going to get better because he's still at that age where he's not a wee boy by any manner of means, and he's handling a man's game easily, but he's not quite he's no filled out, if you know what I mean, to the point where you look at Goldson and you look at something wee Kent and players like that, and they're absolutely brick shithouses. He's no that in Tavernier. He's not quite there yet that way, so that's going to come. But you mentioned Hutton there. It reminds me very much of Hutton in terms of getting up and doing that park with ease, at pace, getting up and doing that park with the ball at his feet, at pace, going by players as if they're not there, just by sheer will and by pace. And he's done it now, well, done it second half at Parkhead, he done it yesterday, he's done it at a European a couple of times. So the boy's ready, right? I don't think there's any question. And if Tav decided to go in the mid-season, a close season, then I don't think we'd be sitting there saying, oh, well, we've got a young boy at right back. I think we'd all be sitting there saying, this is a really positive thing for Patterson and for Rangers. But he's, I think what we're going to have is the best of both worlds. I think Tav's played, he's played nearly every game, right? And then when we miss him, there's no really been until Nathan Patterson an understudy worthy. Right, we're playing John Flanagan, and who else would we have with Balogun? So I think what we've got here is an opportunity to get the best of both worlds. We can manage Tavernier as he's getting older, give him rest when appropriate, and we can also bleed this guy into a Rangers team under the tutelage of Steven Gerrard. And it might be that if he keeps progressing, then the decision gets made. We've seen that happen in the past, where big clubs have got rid of big players because there's been an exceptional youth come through the ranks. So I think it's very, very promising. I think he's the best we've had for a long time. I mean, we've spoke, Davey, on this pod about Ross McCrory at times, and it's easy to get a wee bit hyperbolic when you've got a victory in an Old Firm game, because I remember Ross McCrory having a standout game against, in fact, I think it was Gerrard's first win, wasn't it, the Ryan Jack goal game? McCrory played in that, and he was outstanding because it was his kind of game. It was up and at him, it was physical. But there was always that nag at the back of my mind that McCrory just technically wasn't good enough. And I mean, on the ball, he wasn't quite up to standard. And as time went by, we've seen that. I don't think that's the case with Parson. I mean, I'm being super critical about his delivery and his final ball, but is that no natural at that age? Is that no natural? You've just got that wee bit of over enthusiasm in the final third. I think all those kind of things can be coached. So I am quietly expecting of this boy. I think he could go all the way. I think it could be another one where we see him for a season and somebody pays us a lot of money for him. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves.
I think the other guys I want to highlight yesterday, obviously the goal scorer, Heart and Hand's own Stephen Davis. We of course sponsor Stephen Davis, and we thank him for breaking our sponsor curse. And another terrific display from him, capped off with a tremendous goal. I mean, a genuinely brilliant reaction finish from him there. He has been enormous this season, Adam, and along with someone else we're going to talk about and have a lot of fun, I'm sure, discussing in a few minutes. Rangers didn't hand out these extensions because of sentimentality. They've been earned.
Yeah, absolutely. There is obviously a risk, players of that age, that they could fall off a cliff quite quickly in terms of their fitness, but can't see it happening anytime soon, to be honest. Davis has surprised me, definitely, not in terms of performances. I think he's always, on his good days, he's always been excellent. I think maybe last year and even the year before he had some patchy periods, but I tend to think those are when we've had bad results, and it's one of those things when he plays well, we play well, kind of thing. I'm surprised the amount he's managed to play this year. You could argue he's had to play it, with Arfield and Jack not being available for large parts of the year, but he's certainly not let his performance levels slip. I thought he was brilliant yesterday. Just controlling the game in that kind of quiet way. I've still got absolutely no idea what he's doing in the box for that goal, to be honest, as the furthest forward midfielder. I think he
said that himself.
He surprised himself, yeah. What a brilliant finish, especially the deflection. You could say we get lucky with that deflection, but how can an overhead kick be lucky when the flight of the ball is changed a second before? It's just an excellent reaction goal, and he thoroughly deserved it. The
other guy I want to mention here, with praise to the two centre-backs who were both tremendous as always, just quality defenders. And, you know, Andy, you and me are children of Souness, and we grew up with, you get the back four and the keeper sorted and things can flow from there. But Ryan Kent, they are terrified of him. They are absolutely terrified of him. Their players and their coaching staff, I mean, every single time he gets the ball, I was fortunate enough to be at the game yesterday, and you could see it on the bench. They all spring up when he gets the ball and they're all screaming at players to get over and get covering. But on top of his undoubted talent and the fact that he occupies teams so much and he's in their head, there was a moment in the 92nd minute when the ball broke out of our defence and Ryan Kent belts over from his wing, wins a tackle and wins a throw-in. In the 92nd minute, 2-0 up. It's that attitude that I think marks him out as a very, very special player.
You're right, and it's that attitude that I clocked at very, very early in his first loan spell was, because he came in for a wee bit of stick, and I think we have been re-educated as a Rangers support by the Gerrard era in terms of what to expect from a team and what to expect from players, because I think we had I may be wrong, you can correct me, and the listeners can correct me as well in comments if they think this is the case, but I think we always thought of wingers as wingers, and they stick to the back, they stick to the touchline, and they work up and down, and they don't really come away from that. But this 4-3-3, we play with the double tens, has just kind of transformed the expectations, and Kent is the player to take advantage of that freedom, because apart from his work rate, which means that defensively, and I thought we were superb defensively yesterday, despite the chances we gave up. I thought our shape, especially once we went ahead, was fantastic, and Celtic were labouring to get any traction at all because of that. He's part of that because he works so hard and he's tactically intelligent. But more than that, the first goal kind of demonstrated his worth, because first of all, it's a beautiful moment to see Scott Brown showing up for the fucking arse that he's always been and always will be, right? This myth that's grown up around him has been well and truly laid bare this season because he's finally came up against a Rangers team of note, of worth. And that moment there encapsulated it, because when he turned Brown and Brown went for a pie and Kent went on forward, it was, how do you defend against that when you've got a guy of that ability comes so deep, right? So he gets it just at the edge of the centre circle. And Brown has obviously got to follow him, or somebody's got to follow him, because he can hurt you from anywhere in the park. Because if he gets that ball and he gets moving with it, you're either going to give away a foul or else you're going to get hurt. So he is a talisman for us just now, and I think we're starting to take it a wee bit for granted, because his performances in Europe have been brilliant. His performances when he's not quite at it are still such a contributory factor to Rangers' success, because, as you say, David, no team that's playing him can rest or can I dismiss him and say, oh, he's having a bad game, we don't really need to worry about him just now, because he's dynamite. And I think the best is still to come for him. This is the scary part. Much like Arribo, he's grown into being a Rangers player where the responsibility to win games, let's face it, when we play a 4-3-3, the front three have got the responsibility to win the game for us, basically. He is one that now shoulders that, no problem whatsoever. So I love Kent. I think he's fantastic. I think he's a major asset to his on the park, and he's a guy that's got that steel. He's got that killer instinct that I was talking about earlier on. That's what makes Rangers players. That's what makes great players, right? And he is being moulded in the image of Gerrard. This is what Gerrard was as a player. And the more players we have like that, the harder we're going to be to claw back. And this is why I like the way that we're bringing players in and recruiting them. Very few of them get flung in at the deep end. Scott Wright's an example, we're bleeding him in, but they're given time to actually get up to speed, not so much with the football, but with actually the mentality side of things. And Kent epitomises that. So he's a leader in there, quiet, efficient, not a captain material, but he's one of the ones that we can look at now as a leader. And what age is he? 20, 24, something like that. A lot more to come for Kent, and 7 million looks like, I mean, we were obviously surprised when we spent that money at that time, just because of the situation we were in financially. But 7 million for Ryan Kent is not a lot of money.
And of course, Alan McGregor. That the penalty was awarded, and I was raging because I didn't think it was a free kick in the first place, Adam. And then again, I don't have replays, so I'm going, that's not a penalty. Really didn't think it was a penalty. And the Celtic have a bit of a set to over the penalty, which is never, I think, a great sign. Edouard wins, and then been having a terrible day, missed a couple of sitters, and had been basically in Big Phil's back pocket. But he steps up, hits the penalty. Alan McGregor makes the save, because of course he does, because that's what he's like. He's like, nah, not the day, lads. And it was just the most Alan McGregor thing possible, because you get goalkeepers who are good goalkeepers, you get goalkeepers who make big saves, but the top goalkeepers are the guys who do it all the time when you need it most. Yeah, I agree, same as you. I don't think it was a free kick, and it was even less of a penalty. If that's a penalty, then Hellander's arm on Welsh in the first half is also a penalty, so I don't understand the inconsistency there. There's nothing different on those, which is a wee bit frustrating, but they can't claim that the Masons are out to get them now. I don't see any of them moaning about the fact that it wasn't a penalty, which is ironic. But yeah, at this point, maybe I'd had one too many beers or not, I didn't have any doubts that McGregor was saving that. Edouard's body language taking it. I actually thought Griffiths might have took it and he would have scored, to be fair. So when I seen it was Edouard taking it, he didn't look like he was up for it at all, and he's theatrics after it, where he's head in his hands and it's all drama for the cameras, as if he can't believe he missed it. He cut it right down the middle of the goal. It's one of the worst penalties of all time. He also looks, if you watch the run up, as he's running up, he has a very clear look to the corner he's going to put it in. Now, I've played in goals and that's what you're watching for. So he's got his head down and then he looks up to the corner he's going and he puts it there. So it wasn't a great penalty, but you still need to save it, and Alan McGregor did. With his usual aplomb, Andy, with you pick a side and go and hopefully you get it. And of course he plays it down. None of the chest beating or anything for him. He's immediately shouting at his defence, get organised, get settled. The guy's just a winner.
mentality. That's what we're talking about there, because he basically willed Edward to fluff that. And I said in a pod a couple of weeks ago, we're talking about McGregor now doing the unthinkable, which is overtaking Gorham in terms of all-time great goalkeepers. That's 3 penalty saves against Celtic, isn't it? The Samaras, Christie, and then Edward. That's the stuff a legend. To do it once, never mind 3 times, isn't it? But I just wanted to say a wee thing. I don't want to talk about Celtic too much here, but I thought it was worthy of note yesterday. And again, it was Premier Sports, and I know it's Derek McInnes, but the body language of Edward keeps on getting referred to, and how he's treated in terms of that body language. McInnes basically said, his body language is because he's low in confidence, and I think we sometimes forget he's a young boy and blah, 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 right? Compared to the body language analysis, we usually have a Alfie, So I think all these things are being laid bare, that their team has collapsed, and his body language yesterday is because we fucking put him in that place mentally. We have beat them down so hard this season, that we were so relentless, that we became so far in the horizon. They effectively couldn't live with the pressure, try to stay up. That's what happened to us in seasons gone by, isn't it? It's not the pressure of keeping winning, it's the pressure of keeping in touch. They couldn't live with it. This is all Rangers doing. It's nothing to do with Celtic or down in tools again, as I say. I just thought yesterday, mentality-wise, you could probably epitomise it with that penalty. McGregor standing there looking, saying, I'm going to save this. A lot of Rangers fans, I can't say I thought he was going to save it. I hope he was going to save it, but I can't say it's a definite save here. But with hindsight, a lot of the Rangers fans are telling us now thought he was going to save it. That tells you a lot about the mentality, A, the players on the pitch, and B, the supporters on the couches just now.
It shows how fragile I think rating of players is. Anyway, and I get that imbalance there between Edouard and Morelos. I think you're right, but when it's going bad for you, it can fall quite quickly. You only need to look at Ayer, who was the vaunted as being Barcelona bound 2 years ago, and he's always been hopeless defensively. But now the rest of them are rubbish. He gets shown up, and right. now they're chasing him.
It was all a myth. It was all a myth in them winning things against Aberdeen, and a Rangers team that was desperately trying to get back to the heights. So this the kind of pack of cards thing is a good analogy for it, but it's more than that. It's a truth laid bare. That's what you're seeing yesterday.
Yep, 100%. And I think that on that debate now, everybody has their decade they grew up in. For me, it was the 90s, and there is a nostalgia attached to that. Things were great in the 90s. We weren't locked down. People had pubic hair. It was just a happier, more innocent time. But I've always said Andy Gorham was better than Alan McGregor. And every time Alan McGregor is a game like this, people get in touch with me and go, what about now? Okay then, folks, here you go. Right. Andy Gorham in 92-93 was the best Rangers keeper I've ever seen. He was the best in the world that year. I wouldn't have swapped him for anyone. And trust me, if you were about at that time, you'll agree with me. If you weren't, then you'll need to take our word for it. But Alan McGregor is the greatest Rangers goalkeeper because of what he's achieved, his longevity, his consistency, the way he's handled himself, the fact he's doing it at this age. So I hope that clears that up for everyone. That yes, if you say he's the greatest, I will agree with you. But in terms of the best, nothing's topping that 92-93 Andy Gorham year. And funnily, the thing is, Andy, you'll remember this as well, that people always say, but he had a great defence to play behind. That defence used to give away about half a dozen chances every game.
Mm-hmm. Different type of football. Different type of football back then, but you go back to I always recall about Pittodrie, Leeds United, these away, that was games where our defence was all over the shop. We looked heroic, and Big Goff looked heroic, and Big Dave McPherson and David Robertson and stuff like that, but the truth of the matter was that Gorham was saving their bacon and making the team look better than it actually was. So I'd agree with your assessment, and that's official, folks, by the way. So you might as well take that to the bank. But 92-93, the year of Schmeichel, funnily enough, but Gorham was the best in the world. There's no question about it. I don't think you could ever say McGregor's ever been the best in the world. So it's about the level he reached that season. So that's actually a good difference you've pointed out, David. That over a career, I think McGregor now shades it.
Yeah, I think so. But it's a nice debate to have, and I'm just glad that I was able to see both of them. So they leave their dreams crushed, the gap huge, the mentality's changing, and one of the things I want to talk to you about, lads, is contempt, and in a good way. I remember sitting here, and actually a listener brought it up to me years ago in Hartenhand, and I said after a heavy defeat to them, they hate us, and our players don't hate them; they fear them. And until we have got back to a place where we really despise them and want to gub them every single time and want to rub their noses in it, well, not because they want to do it to us, we're never going to overtake them. This team hates them. And you can see it. You can see it in the way they approach these games. You can see it in their one-on-ones. You can see it in the way that they fly into tackle. But it's constructive. We're better than you, and we are going to beat you. You can see it with the manager on the touchline and his reactions to the Celtic box. We saw it with Michael Beale last season. It is a healthy thing because we can talk about, wouldn't it be nice if we all met up for flower arranging and cocktails, but it's never going to happen. And they've run roughshod over us for years because they wanted to look down on us while they had their foot on our throats. And this team have got that. And I think if you go through that Rangers 1-11, you saw it with Borna Barisic the other day when talking about Celtic saying they were a better team than us. They've got, I think, a healthy contempt for this Celtic side. And I believe you need that. I think if you want to be the upper half of the old firm, then you've got to want to make the other half suffer. We as fans clearly do, but I do believe it's important. And for the best part of a decade, they had it and we didn't. I think the shoe's on the other foot now. I'm pretty sure they still hate us, but they're scared of us.
I think you're spot on. I think that emotion and that intensity that comes from only having one rival in the league, if you can even call them that this season, I think you need that desire to get yourself up for the more monotonous games and then make sure you're at the prime condition for these games. There's a couple of sides. I've seen a few people yesterday, not necessarily criticising, but just I really wish all that's missing is for to give them a proper doing. To me, these are doings because these are 2-0s without breaking stride, and they know that we've decided not to score more, which is even more of an insult to them, I think, than anything else. And you can talk, and I'm sure we'll hear in the build up to the next one and maybe the start of last season, Celtic played really well in 3 games last year. You got 1 point. It doesn't make a difference in these games. And
no.
You mentioned there about that 90s team used to give up a number of chances and Gorham saved them. That's part of football as well. Having a good goalkeeper is part of football. Yes, teams are going to give up chances. We gave up a decent amount of chances yesterday, but it's an old firm game. It's tense. We're pressing. We've won the league. Chances are going to come up. We don't make many mistakes, but chances are going to come up. That's football. It's unrealistic to have a game where we had at Parkhead last October, where there's just no chances at all. That's not going to happen every time. So, yes, they're going to get chances, but as I said at the start, you're big players. You need to have big players that have got that necessary intensity for these games and hate the opposition as much as the opposition hate you, and that they take the chances when they're given to them. And I think we could argue this season, every chance that has came to us in a big game against Celtic, we've taken, and that's the difference.
Yeah, and again, that's part of football, being clinical. I go back to the League Cup final. Rangers battled. That was one of the best Rangers performances you'll see. Couldn't put the ball in the frigging net. And in the end up, I know how bad I felt after that. It was no consolation to go, we were the better team on the day. Win. It's an old firm game, and particularly in a cup tie. That's all that matters. Just get through. That's all that matters. And we did it with a bit to spare, I felt, yesterday. So, no, just a glorious day all in for Rangers, and we move on. 2 games now, Andy, against St Johnstone. League game on Wednesday. That's important. All Rangers games are important. And you don't want to give them a confidence boost for a start, but the extra carrot of 100 points, of going undefeated. I've mentioned before, it doesn't come up that often. You don't get this close to an undefeated season. And therefore, for me, it becomes a wee bit more special. If in the old, the old football fan thing of going, aye, but if you could pick one, then yeah, I'd take Scottish Cup. Absolutely ahead of going undefeated. But I don't see why we can't aim for both.
No, and before the split and we would just win the league, I was kind of nonplussed about the unbeaten thing because, it's a nice to have, but I don't think nothing was going to top 55, and tagging on an unbeaten league season with it would just have been nice. I think exceptionally good achievement, but I don't think we're going to be talking about the fact we never get beat the whole season. I think we'd just be talking about winning the league that year. It was always going to be the thing. But now you're so close to it. I mean, what is there, 4 games left? And we seem to be... I spoke before about this wee mini season that we've had. So we win the league with a bit of breathing space. We had the European game and then we've come back to the Scottish Cup. And then we've got another kind of second win where we've said, right, let's push it for just this wee burst here. So obviously the league game's falling into that wee burst. And you'd like to think there's players there that are trying to kind of push themselves forward, that if we do go further in the cup, then they're going to be in contention for it. So I think we need to go for it. But the same token, I don't know why we're playing on Wednesday and somebody critical to us gets an injury or gets a knock. And I do think that these are opportunities to bleed the likes of Jack Simpson and Scott Wright further into the team to our benefit next season. So I think there's a bit of balance there's required. Keep the team strong, but let's kind of make sure we protect our interests. Another thing is, and this ties in with yesterday and what you were just saying, Adam, about the fact that we could have went for the jugular yesterday. I think at 2-0 so early in the game, I'm sitting here saying, do you know what, really nice to fucking beat these mob 4-5-0. And I know that's kind of fan fantasy, but we could have kept going. But we've got such a brain, which incidentally I would consider Stephen Davis the brain of the team, that we can turn the dial up and down here. And the reason we can do that is because we've always got a bit in reserve, and that's both on the part, but I thought the benches were a very telling thing yesterday, and this will prove again on Wednesday and for the remaining league games. We've got a bench of note now, which if you compare it last season, that's a complete volte-face between where we were and where Celtic were. If you looked at our bench yesterday, we had a number of options there. What did they have? Griffiths, right? So I think your squad means that we can play on Wednesday with a number of changes. You can bring in Hanji, you can bring in Zungu, you can bring in Wright, you can bring in Roof to start, bring in Simpson. Are we still going to be expecting to drop Henderson Johnson? Absolutely not. So a wee bit of rotation I expect Wednesday, but let's go for the 100 points. Let's go for the invincible season.
Yeah, the opportunities like us don't come out, and they've earned it. They've put themselves in this position, and that's the most important thing. And they do, they absolutely deserve all the praise that they're getting. But ending the season with all of it is, it makes it. They're already immortal. I was going to say it makes them immortal. They're already immortal because of 55. But just adding to it, I haven't won the Scottish Cup since 2009. Get it, do it, bring it in, and realistically, Adam. We should have learned from St Mirren that I was guilty of this. I've got, we'll win it now. That's them out. So therefore, we'll win it. So we should have learned that lesson, a painful lesson. But you still have to balance it with that is the biggest threat to us gone.
Yeah, I think Gerard mentioned that yesterday, didn't he? He said that St Mirren was on him in terms of the team selection. He rotated too much. Time of year it was, obviously. Just Europe had just finished. There was lots of games coming thick and fast, and he's maybe just over-rotated for that game. I think Andy's point is spot on. He won't necessarily make that mistake as well. Again, look, the prize has been won. It's like you've pulled at a dancing on your way home. Am I going to get a kebab or am I going to get chips? It doesn't really matter. You've pulled anyway. You've got the main prize. If we get the cup or we get the unbeaten season, it's a cherry on the cake. For me, I'm the same as you. Scottish Cup is the priority, but I think the management team will manage accordingly. And on Andy's point about giving them a doing, if I think, touch wood, if I know the team and know the management as well as we think we do, that'll be the next game against Celtic, because that's a proper free hit. I know yesterday was about control and it's about showing that you're the best team, but ultimately winning the tie. This next one coming up is an absolute free hit, and it's a free hit for Celtic as well, but they're not good enough to take advantage of it, in my opinion. So I think that's that next game, and I think the management team will have that drilled into the players that this is the game where you can go and rub their noses in it, for want of a better expression. So that's how I think it will go. That's how I hope it will go.
And Adam, you have some big news for people who, like yourself, like the tactical side of the game, have no friends and sit in a lot of night looking at those, whatever they are, radar thingies. You manna from heaven if you're a Rangers supporter who is into all that shite.
You told me that we were friends, so I'm a wee bit annoyed about that, but okay.
Acquaintance. I think I said acquaintances.
Oh, okay, fine.
Whatever you read into that was your...
Yeah, for some reason, someone has decided to give me a publishing deal, so I'm currently writing a book on Gerrard's tactical blueprint, and it will be a look at the kind of tactical philosophy that the team has, a wee bit of a evolution style in terms of how the style has changed and the players that have helped us get to the style that we have now. There'll be a kind of deep analysis of how the midfield's changed over that period, for example, how Tavernier's changed from kind of fullback to what we see now, Morelos' role, how that's adapted, the number 10s Andy mentioned earlier on. So there'll be all of that in there from start to finish, and it'll cover the 3-year period up until hopefully the Scottish Cup final, and that should be available early next year.
Andy, I'm sure you'll be buying that.
Nah. What can you teach me about tactics? Come on.
Sarah will be buying.
Sarah will buy it, aye. Sarah will buy it. She's supportive of everyone on Heart and Hand. Unlike some.
In all seriousness, no, I do dip in and out of the tactics stuff, and it's actually quite enlightening, it is. So, I may get out of the library, Adam, if that's all right.
One of my best pals did that with my book. He said, when's it hitting the library? I said, you fucking kidding me? He's like, oh, and he did as well. So anyway, thank you so much to everyone for listening to us today. Now, in terms of this so-called Euro Super League stuff, we're still, of course, waiting on more information on how it will affect Rangers coming out, but full coverage of it over on our Patreon site, which is patreon.com/Heart and Hand, where we can get into more detail on that sort of thing. We'll have a couple of shows specifically looking at it. It's just $1.99 per month, so if you want to go and sign up, and there's also plenty of gloating. There will be another of our famous Timplosion pods, in which we will bring you the words of Celtic supporters about yesterday. By the way, what is it about Celtic fans when they lose a game and break TVs? It's become my thing now that I look through social media for it, and there was an absolute classic of the genre yesterday where a boy had launched his telly out the window at the McGregor penalty save and his neighbour got a photo. I get angry at the football, but it never occurs to me, do you know what I'm going to do, by the way? I'm going to break my own television. But it's a wee bit like shiting in the inside of your own cell, isn't it?
Maybe he bumped Bright House for it anyway, so it didn't cost me anything. Maybe he's not been told Bright House is in liquidation now, but then he'll be an expert in liquidation, so he might. That's
true. Tactic experts, let's not forget. My thank you to our executive producers in London, Mike Lee and Paul Miles, and my thanks to Adam.
Cheers, David.
And to Andy.
Pleasure, thanks.
Cammy will be back later in the week with a review of the first St Johnstone game and a look ahead to the second. So until then, take care, stay safe, and remember, we are the people. Take care. Bye-bye.